one of the principles that we've been learning about as we go through the law of torts, one of the key principles is the idea that there can be fault or there can be no fault. And the Mishnah is going to learn this out in great detail, but it goes back actually at its roots to the verse that we learned about the ox. So vechigof shor ish at shore'ehu. Some guy's ox pushes his neighbor's ox and it dies. And they actually take joint responsibility for the damage. They sell the live ox and they divide the price, and then they divide the value of the dead animal. So in other words, if you like, it's considered normal, or that there's some normality, that there's some, we say it's just one of those, the way that Maimonides says, look, it's just one of those things that happens. But that's in a normal situation. But if it's known that this ox was in the habit of goring and the owner fails to take responsibility for it, at that point, the owner becomes fully responsible. And the Mishnah has these two categories. The regular accident they call tam, which is harmless. And the accident which should have been anticipated is called mu'ad. And I've translated mu'ad as known right the way through this Mishnah, right the way through. And we'll see as we begin the second chapter of the Mishnah that the Mishnah wants to define in more detail. Okay, what is it? What does it mean? What is a normal accident, and what is that we just, we can share responsibility for? We could call that no fault in today's motor insurance terminology. And what kind of accident is known? So the Mishnah begins in the second chapter. Keitzad haregel mu'edet l'shaber kederech hilucha. How is the leg known to break as it walks along? So we're talking about the leg of an ox here. And the leg is going to be one of these archetypal categories that the Gemara and the Mishnah will keep on going back to. So it's an archetypal category. It's known to break as it walks along. What do we mean by that? That if you're walking along with an ox, I mean, it has 4 feet. Everybody knows an ox has 4 feet, and it is going to break stuff. It's going to break stuff as it walks along. And so if you're the owner, you have to take care of it. It's your responsibility as an owner to take care of an ox if you're walking it along, because you know that oxen do break things. And that's essentially what the Mishnah is going to say. A beast is known to walk kedarka. It's in its usual way and break stuff. So if it breaks stuff while walking along in its usual way, well, you're the owner, you should have taken responsibility for it. But you're not responsible, or you don't have the same level of responsibility for more remote possibilities. So haitam of edet, if it kicked, kicking is not a normal thing that oxen do, and the Mishnah already articulated this at the end of the last chapter. So haitam of edet, if it kicked, or shahayud sororot, zim mitachat ragleh, or maybe there are stones or chips which are being thrown out from under its feet. Veshibrait al-kelim, and these chips actually broke other vessels. So he hasn't stepped on a pot, but he's stepped on some kind of stone, and the stone has flown away, and the flying stone has broken a pot. We can visualize, visualize walking through a marketplace with an ox, and there are stallholders on either side, and they've got their pots out in the front of their shops. So this stone has just flown out from underneath the foot of this ox, and it's broken a clay pot in front of a shop. But the Mishnah, in the view of the Mishnah, that's not a normal occurrence that the owner has to watch out for. It's not as if the ox stepped on a pot. He didn't step on the pot. And so the Mishnah goes on to say, Vishibraita Kalim, Mashalem Chatzi Nezek. In that case, someone pays half damages. The owner is not fully responsible for remote events. And in the same way, Darsa ala Keli veshibrato, if it trampled on a vessel and it broke it. And then, Benafal al Keli acher ushvara, and this broken vessel fell on another vessel and broke that one. Ala Rishon Mishalem Nezek Shalem. On the first vessel, he pays full damages because he has to make sure that his ox doesn't trample on stuff going through the marketplace. Ala Rishon Mishalem Nezek Shalem. Ve'al ha'acharon Mishalem Chatzi Nezek. And on the last one, he only pays half because the possibility of a broken pot falling on another pot and breaking the second pot, this is it's remote. And it's the same with chickens. Let's go from the ox to the chicken. Chickens are known to walk in their usual way and to break stuff. Small stuff we're talking about now. But if the chicken somehow got its feet tied up in a cord, this is not the owner's cord, by the way. Clearly, if it's the owner's cord, the owner should take care of it. But the chicken is walking along and it stumbles on a cord lying on the ground and the feet get tangled. Or shahaya mahades, or maybe it was jumping. And somehow, because chickens seem apparently in the time of the Mishnah, chickens don't jump and they don't normally get their tangled in cord. And then veshibered hakelim, and then it broke a vessel. Mushalem chatzi nesek. Someone pays half damages. So we pay half damages for remote possibilities. We pay full damages for things that we should normally have expected to happen. And it's the same. It's the same if this animal eats. So we've got we can picture this ox walking through the marketplace. So we're worried about the foot. And of course, we're worried about its mouth or its tooth, as the Mishnah puts it, because the tooth is going to be another archetype, which the Mishnah will keep on going back to. Keitzad Hashem mu'edet lochal et ha'ra'uila. How is the tooth known to eat whatever is suitable for it? Well, let's go back to the same principles. V'haba'ema mu'edet lochal perot v'yarakot. A beast, cattle are known to eat fruit and vegetables. If you're taking your animal through a market, you have to keep it away from fruit and vegetables. Everybody knows that animals eat fruit and vegetables. Achlak sut or kalim mashalem chatzi nesek. If it ate clothing or utensils, an ox wouldn't normally eat someone's shirt hanging on the front of a store. If it ate clothing or utensils, mashalem chatzi nesek, he only pays half damages because that is not the normal behavior of an ox. What are we talking about here? Birshut hanizak, in the property of the person who's damaged. And we've already learned in the first chapter that if an ox wanders onto someone else's property and damages something on their property, in other words, if he wanders into private property, the owner has particular liability. So absolutely, in the property of the person that's damaged, he's liable. It seems within the public domain, he's not liable. It's as though in the public domain, people need to take care to keep their shirt, not. You can't hang your shirt up in the public domain without taking some risk that some passing object might come and eat your shirt. What if the ox actually benefited from the eating? And of course, we got to feed our ox, and food costs money. So there's a financial implication if your ox walks through the market and eats some food in the market. And of course, you don't have to pay, you don't have to feed your ox or pay to feed your ox if that happens. And the Mishnah continues, if he benefited, that is, if the ox benefited, he pays what he pays the value of the food that was eaten. How do we assess? How do we work this out, what he benefited? So if he ate in the middle of the marketplace, in a regular part of the marketplace, the owner has to pay what he benefited. If he ate at the edge of the marketplace, in other words, edging onto private property, at that point, the owner pays the damage. So the owner takes on more responsibility as his ox moves from the public space to the private space. And similarly, if it ate from the front of a shop, so this ox is walking past the front of a shop and it sees some food and it eats some food, he pays the value of the food that the ox has eaten. If this ox wanders off inside the shop, he's now inside practically the private property of the shopkeeper. Mishalem Masha Hizika. He has to pay the full damages. You can't let your ox get into the private property of a shopkeeper. And I guess in English we would call that a bull in a china shop.